Hey, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my sister, co host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey, Katie.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, it is going. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We camped all weekend.
We did. If we
We had
look
a
like we
lot of
got some
fun.
sun, that's because we did.
We did. It was very sunny. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
it was.
on Memorial Weekend here in Idaho. It's either going to be sunny and beautiful or snowing,
Yes. There's
and
really
maybe
no in
both.
between.
But we
Or
actually had sun the whole
pouring
time.
rain.
hmm
Pouring, pouring rain.
With,
Yeah.
with gale force winds. Yes, but we had
Yes.
none of that. Actually, we just had
No,
beautiful, beautiful weather all weekend long.
we did.
Yeah, and today is my 24th wedding anniversary.
Yes. Happy anniversary.
Thank you very
That
much.
is so
Yeah.
exciting.
So we're not celebrating it today because we just got home from camping and well we're dead tired. So we'll go
Yeah.
out to dinner tomorrow night. But
There you go. There you go.
exciting stuff.
It is. And this show, so we've had some requests to do kind of a synopsis of the Daybell Vallow case. We
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. We have something like 50 episodes in the playlist. This is initially about the missing children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow.
hmm
And then it got way bigger than that. But we thought we would kind of go through a timeline of that case, but also share with you how we first became aware of it because it is local to us. That's why
hmm
we've covered it so heavily.
hmm
And so back in end of November of
hmm
2019, there were a couple of missing children reported in our local news.
Yeah.
And this was Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow.
Yeah.
And they were reported missing out of Rexburg, which is where Katie lives.
hmm
And they were reporting that Tylee was 17.
hmm And at the
Well,
time, my daughter was 17.
right.
Yeah.
So we
And
had this
so
conversation like, do your kids know this girl?
yeah. Now we know now that Tylee actually died when she was 16, to be fair,
Right.
but she had turned 17 shortly after, would have turned 17 shortly after she died. But yeah, so we hit up all my kids. Hey, do you know this girl? And they were all like, no. No, Mars has always said she looks familiar. She looks
Yeah.
familiar. And Mars's best friend works at a coffee hut just down the road from where they lived. And she's always said
Right.
that too. I really, really think I've served her coffee or, a drink before. She looks very familiar. So some people had seen her a little around town, but none of the teenagers knew her at all.
No, no. And now it seems strange to us because Rexburg is a small town. There's only one high
hmm
school.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of information started rolling out about these children. First of all, that their mother is Lori Vallow.
hmm
At the time, we didn't have any idea who that was. You
Yeah.
guys, this was actually before we started True Crime Paranormal.
Yeah.
And honestly, probably one of the reasons that we did.
hmm
We felt really, Katie and you and I both have been very interested in true crime forever.
Oh, yeah.
We always are messaging back and forth with our other sister Kara about, did you see this? What's going on
hmm
here? What do you guys think happened? That kind of thing. And this really caught
Well,
us because it's two
yeah.
missing kids. And you guys, that is rare here,
hmm
other than, oh, they
hmm
were gone overnight and found.
Or a non-custodial parent took off
Yeah,
with them. I mean, that's something we see around here every once in a while. But like
right.
straight up true missing children, no,
And
that's not a thing here. Yeah.
no, and this drug on into December. We were watching for updates like, what the hell is going on with these kids?
hmm
Local community members in the news were like, why don't the police know where these children are? This is not okay.
hmm
We start going on weeks that they're
Yeah.
reported at the time. I mean, so much that there was a
Didn't
lot I
know.
think that you and I knew that we did not say.
There was. Yeah.
Yeah. We figured very early on that these children were dead.
hmm
And we have talked about on here that in active cases, when people are missing, we do not read those kinds of things publicly
Yeah.
because it's not right. There are family members impacted by the things that we say, and
hmm
we have ethics. And, some people might think that's weird as psychics, but we do.
hmm
And we from very early on went, no, we don't feel these kids. They're dead.
Now,
But
in missing persons cases, when families hire us to work with them, of course we
right.
do that. But big public statements, this is not the right time for it.
No.
And, we're just not going to do it,
No, and when
But
bodies are missing and there are no answers, all that does is just create more heartache. And at the time, the police and the media are all trying to be really positive. Hey, we're going to find these kids. They're going to be okay. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So then,
And then, of course, we have Lori and Chad.
Yeah.
Promising everyone they know. Well,
Yeah.
either telling everyone they know that Lori's an empty nester that doesn't have any young children,
Right.
or on the flip side, Chad later on telling everyone the kids are fine. They're fine. She just has to keep them under wraps right now, and that kind of stuff. Like they were
She's
assuring
protecting
everyone.
them. There was all this stuff about that they were being protected.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to learn about the Preparing a People group, the AVOW group. So Preparing a People they call themselves a media company, right?
Yeah.
And they do they're kind of prepper type events.
Conferences. Kind of prepper / kind of new age, kind of Christian, kind of cooked up bunker stuff, all like rolled into one one big package.
Right. And we start finding out that Chad Daybell, who lives in Salem, which is right outside of Rexburg, literally right down the road from our aunt and uncle and some cousins, and that he is big in this stuff, and he's in this what we kind of have just coined the term prepper Mormons. And so we live in a very Mormon community. Obviously, we talk about this a lot, and that he was a Mormon and a part of this group, that they're involved with this prepper group. So they're sort of, preparing for the apocalypse kind of group that's mixing in Mormonism and some new agey stuff. And, it's all getting all mixed up together.
Yeah.
So we start learning about Chad, and then we start learning about Lori, and we find out that Lori actually had only lived in Rexburg a very short time.
Yeah.
And that the kids had only lived in Rexburg a very short time, and that Tylee had supposedly already completed high school online. Why the kids didn't know her.
Yeah.
But the JJ did go to a local elementary school briefly.
Yeah, for about 20 days. Yeah.
Yeah. So these things kind of all start coming out, and we're like, oh my gosh. And we're starting to identify and recognize that there are a bunch of people in our community that believe these same things. Are kind of involved in this same group of people, who immediately start, initially really start defending Chad in particular. We start seeing a lot of public defense of him, because there are questions about
rabidly
do something to these kids,
rabidly defending Chad, in every capacity possible, online and in person and at church, and just absolutely insisting that Chad would never do any of the things that he's been accused of. And in the midst of all of this happening, Chad's wife dies. Chad's wife of 49 years, we learn she has died as well.
20 years. She was 49 when she died.
Right. Sorry. 20. Yes. That would be weird math.
That'd be weird math.
Yeah. We learned that right around the time of all of these other things taking place, his wife, Tammy, died.
And this has all already happened. Like, we're finding out about it. And
after the fact,
people who knew her, knew that she had passed away. But we're starting to go, what's going on with these people? Like, these kids are missing. His wife has died. She died very suddenly.
And then within just a couple of weeks, Chad and Lori were married. And that really struck people hard that happened.
It did. That was very strange. And there were, major questions that started coming out that Tammy Daybell was buried within like 3 days of dying in another state.
Yeah.
And that seemed weird, There wasn't I don't know. Mormons have a pretty specific way of how they handle death and burial and funerals and
Yeah.
stuff. And this was very, very rushed.
Mhm.
It didn't seem fitting at all. And he
Mhm.
buried her in Utah instead of in Idaho here where he lives, which was another
Mhm.
strange thing.
In Springfield, Utah, where her parents live, where they actually
Yeah,
both where they came from, both of them.
right.
But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they did in fact live there at one point, but there were a
Mhm.
lot of things that seemed off about
Mhm.
this. So then we find out that the FBI is involved
Yes.
and that the FBI puts out, and this is by now January of 2020, probably.
Yes, and the way we find out the FBI is involved is that suddenly, outside of the Rexburg Police Department, is this giant FBI trailer, like
Yeah,
working unit thing
yeah,
that we've never seen in town before. And so that all the buzz is what the hell's the FBI doing here? Well,
yeah,
it was easy to see that they were here for this case. Yeah.
yeah. And they put out a call
Hmm.
because they want to know, was anybody in the area in Yellowstone Park the weekend of September 8th, 2019?
Hmm.
And if so, do they have any, were they at Old Faithful in particular? Do they have any pictures or any video that they could
Hmm.
share with the FBI? Because what they're looking for, and we're showing a picture of this right now,
Hmm.
if you're watching, and if not, we'll tell you, this is a picture of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, the siblings who at this point are missing,
Hmm.
with their uncle Alex Cox.
With such a grin on his face. Like they're just one big happy family. And
Right?
as
The kids look
we,
like they're having fun.
hmm,
This looks like a positive thing.
yep,
This is also the last day that Tylee shows up anywhere on the planet of Earth.
yep.
This is
And then, of
literally her
course,
last day alive.
yeah, we learn later about all of the cell phone pings that help convince, the prosecutor that it was the very next morning, or maybe in the middle of the night, that Alex, Lori, and Chad played parts in murdering Tylee, dismembering her body, burning it, and burying it in Chad's yard.
Right,
I just
right.
think this photo is particularly chilling and sad to
Oh, it
think.
is. Well, and then JJ only lived about 10 more days
Yeah.
and met a similar fate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So this was very interesting. This came up when, it's not like the FBI gets involved in cases in our area very much.
No.
And I was reading something online on Reddit about this case and about how it's weird how even though we have a lot of small communities around here, we sort of all feel like we're one
Mhm.
big community, and we do.
Mhm.
So I live in Idaho Falls, Idaho, which is probably the fifth largest city in the state. And
Mhm.
you're going to laugh when I say that there's about 60,000 people living here
Mhm.
in city limits.
Mhm.
But then from here north, we are the biggest city. We are the hub anywhere, all the way to the Montana state line, the
Mhm.
Wyoming state line, and even across into Montana and Wyoming. Many people come here,
Yeah.
either to Idaho Falls or to Rexburg, where Katie lives,
Mhm.
because we have things like Walmart and big grocery stores
Mhm.
and,
Shopping, healthcare. Yeah.
yeah, doctors, hospitals. You know, Rexburg is the only hospital all the way to Yellowstone Park
Yeah.
on the west entrance. And so
Yeah.
we do feel like one big community. Even though this is
Mhm.
happening in Rexburg, it feels like it's happening to all of us because we are very
Mhm.
connected. It feels especially like that for us because you live there. We
Mhm.
grew up there. That's like our
Mhm.
town. And
Yes.
so suddenly we have missing children,
Mhm.
what we know to be, from a psychic standpoint, dead children,
Yeah.
just not something that happens.
No.
So
No.
then, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we had a special serendipitous in with the press with the early days of this case
Yes, we did.
because my daughter was the editor of her school paper. And so she had a press pass. And
Yeah.
so I was able to ride on that press pass as the adult, with her to various things. And we were able to attend things like press conferences with the Woodcocks after Lori was ordered to produce the kids and didn't. And
Mhm.
we were able to be at the jail when Lori was extradited from Hawaii and brought in. And we were able to be at the press site when they announced that they had found bodies.
Right.
About a mile from Chad's house is where they set up the press staging area, and we were there. We were able to get a video, of the sheriff announcing. At that time, they only said they had found remains. They didn't say there were two bodies, but we actually, had a front row seat to all of that because of Mars's press pass.
Yes, that was
We got
very
really
handy.
lucky that way because we were able to get some inside looks and coverage that we wouldn't have had otherwise. But
Right, super important because, as you
mhm,
mentioned, so at this point, the police here have had enough of all of this crap. They've been lied to by
mhm,
Chad, they've been lied to by Lori, they've been lied to by a lot of other people we're gonna get to.
mhm,
At this point, Chad and Lori are in Hawaii. They have basically fled and are in Hawaii.
mhm,
They were supposedly missing for a while, but what we hear is that the police actually knew where they were the whole time.
mhm,
So a judge here in Madison County says, you have to produce your children. You have to be here. Well, it was right at the end of January, wasn't it? Like the
mhm.
25th or something like
Yeah.
that. So local police go to Hawaii.
Mhm,
They track down Chad and Lori, and we had local
mhm,
press there as well. And they tell her, you've got 5 days. We're serving you, and you've got 5 days to be back in Madison County, either at the Department of Health and Welfare or the police department with your children physically present
mhm,
to prove to us that they're okay.
mhm,
So then, of course, our community is on absolute pins and needles. Is she going to show
mhm.
up? Are these kids okay?
Right.
And
And
that's
as we're
when
waiting, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's when we really get a good look at
Yes.
who Kay and Larry Woodcock are. If you want to share
Yes.
that.
So Kay and Larry are the grandparents of JJ. JJ was adopted by Charles Vallow, Lori's fourth husband, and
Mhm.
Lori. JJ was the grandson of Kay and Larry. Their son had a baby that they were going to need to put into a permanent home situation. And Lori and Charles had stepped up to the plate and adopted JJ. JJ was autistic and had some behavior stuff, though we really felt like that's been played up a lot by
Yes.
Lori, to make it seem like he was just extremely difficult. And it's hard to know that that's really true.
Yeah. It's certainly not
Um,
what his schools have reported.
no, it's not at all. But at any rate, Charles, this is when we start learning about Charles, husband number four,
Mhm.
and the fact that Charles was indeed killed by Lori's brother Alex. And at the time, the story in the news and the police reports say that the death was self defense. This
Right.
happened in Arizona, in Arizona in June of 2019, just a couple of months before July, just a couple of months before she came to Rexburg. We know now that there are first degree uh, charges against Lori,
Conspiracy.
conspiracy charges pending against Lori from Arizona in Charles's death, and so it does seem as though there are murder charges here, and so
Yeah.
we can now confidently say what we all, I'm sure you guys too, believed, and that is that Charles was truly murdered, not just killed in self defense.
Right.
But
That was an intentional plan.
so Kay and Larry have been completely cut off from JJ. And this happened sometime after Charles died. There was a very large life insurance policy, and Charles knew that Lori was fixing to kill him.
Yeah.
In fact, he had tried to get divorced from her earlier in 2019. And, the golden vajayjay won again. And she talked him
Yeah.
into, for whatever reason, not divorcing her. But he had actually made a statement to his attorneys that if anything happens to me, it was Lori and Alex.
Yeah.
And indeed, something happened. But because of all of that, and
Let's,
because,
let's talk about Alex for oh, we did. Sorry. We did show a picture of Alex. Never mind.
yeah. So because of all of that, he changed his life insurance policy and took it completely out of Lori's name and put it in
Yeah.
Kay's name. He had 2 adult sons and JJ. And he wanted to make sure they were taken care of if anything happened to him. Lori had been super weird. She had done some really crappy things to him. She'd stolen like $35,000 from his business account. Like
Yeah.
things were not good, and he wasn't trusting her.
Mm.
He had a court order for her to have a psych eval that she shimmied her way out of with the help of the Chandler police.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is when we start
Chandler,
learning all
Arizona.
of this. Yeah. This is when we start learning all of this and going, what the hell? But anyway, she was so angry that she didn't get that life insurance that she'd pretty much cut Kay off. And Kay and JJ used to talk. They'd FaceTime almost every day. And sometime around the end of August, that was their last conversation. And
Yeah.
Lori quit answering the phone, and JJ quit being able to talk to her. And it was done, and she knew something was wrong. She was frantic trying to find them. They moved. She didn't know where they went. She
Yeah.
was in a panic.
This
But
is when they showed up in Rexburg,
in
Idaho.
Rexburg, Idaho, she had no idea where they had gone. But Kay is a great sleuth.
She is.
And Kay logged in to Charles's Amazon account. She had all of his passwords because, again, he knew something was up and his life was in danger. And,
He sure did.
as we know it was. But she discovered that someone had been making purchases on Charles' Amazon account and shipping them to a place called Rexburg, Idaho. So she called the police in Rexburg, Idaho and said, I think my grandson is there. I think he's at this address. I am very concerned for his safety and would like a welfare check. That's how this all came together. Had
Yep.
Kay not found the connection, had she not found the Amazon address situation, it's possible that these kids would still be buried in Chad's backyard and people would still not even realize they were missing
Might not
because
even have
nobody
known they
was really
existed.
looking for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All props to Kay for her persistence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the Woodcocks end up in town. They come to Rexburg because they're frantically looking for their grandson. And behind the scenes, there is an order that has been put together by Health and Welfare, an emergency custody order that they were to be awarded temporary emergency custody of JJ as soon as Lori turned him over. Because the police were agreeing, so they were smelling a big rat named Lori. And so, of course, the date comes and goes.
Right.
And guess who completely ignores it and doesn't turn over the kids?
Yeah. Nothing
And
happens.
we were at
This
a
town
press
was,
conference.
I was going to say, we were crawling with press that day, weren't we? This whole area was like,
oh, yeah. Everyone was
never
on
had this
pins
much
and
attention.
needles. We were at a press conference that evening that was supposed to be with Kay and Larry. And poor Larry, his blood pressure was so high and he was so ill by the end of that day that he had to go back to the hotel and lay down. And the press conference was just with Kay. And Kay, handled herself beautifully and just, is just persistently saying something has to give. Like the authorities have to keep pushing. There's something not right here. And the judge said, okay, well, now I'm issuing a warrant for your arrest, Lori, because you're not doing what we're saying. And there's something wrong here because where are those kids and who's taking care of them?
Right.
So that's when they issue an arrest warrant for her and serve it to her in Hawaii. She's arrested in Hawaii. And they want to extradite her back to Rexburg. So she actually tried to fight extradition, she threatened to, which is so silly because the only time you have any grounds to fight extradition is if the police can't prove that you are who they think they are.
Well, and there was some weird stuff that went on with that because she and Chad were married in Hawaii in November of 2019. But there were questions about if they were actually legally married or not,
Mm-hmm.
and she kept jumping back and forth between going by Lori Vallow and Lori Daybell,
Mm-hmm.
and only very recently has that actually been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
What is her name? And
Right.
so they tried to pull some shenanigans around that just based on that fact.
Yeah. And
But
you
as you
might
can see,
notice, yeah,
yeah,
you
say it.
you may notice that we listed all of her last names because Lori's been married 5 times.
Well, we should add her maiden name to that too.
Well, yeah. So her name is Lori Cox Yanes Lagoya Ryan Vallow Daybell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's been able to go by a lot of different names in her lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And disrupt a lot of different families in her lifetime.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So they issued a $1 million bail or bond
Mm-hmm.
in Hawaii, the judge did.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone freaked out because at this point she's charged with child abandonment, child endangerment, lying to the
And
police.
lying to the police. Yeah.
So it's pretty minor charges. But everybody knows what we're really dealing with at this point. You know, I feel like everybody did in the legal system. They're like, this woman killed her kids and she's lying about it. And we have to make sure we can hold her.
Mm-hmm.
So they extradite her here.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a very
Yeah.
unsatisfying experience trying to see her arrive at the
Yeah.
Madison County Jail, right?
We did. They did quite a bit of misdirects. People thought that they would be flying into Idaho Falls to the big airline there, and then bringing her by police transport here. And they didn't. They flew her into the Rexburg airport. So they flew her from
Which is just a tiny little.
Hawaii. Right. They flew from Hawaii to, I think, Los Angeles to Boise to the Rexburg Municipal Airport, which was not what almost any of the press expected, except for East Idaho News, because they've always had an inside.
They've
Always
had
had
it
an
up all the way.
inside mole. But when they brought her in, they actually brought one vehicle in through the doors where they normally bring in suspects. All of the press was there. They were taking pictures of that vehicle. I was a part of that. And she wasn't in that vehicle. She was actually brought in through a different door at the same time. And that was very frustrating to the press. They felt like they'd been lied to. And then after they brought her in, a spokesman for the police department came out to talk to us. And and he was asked point blank, was Lori in that vehicle? And he said, yes.
He
lied to our faces.
The press.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people were pissed off
really
about.
not cool. The press was furious about it. But at any rate, at that point, Lori was in custody and was due to be arraigned in Madison County.
Yeah. So she was arraigned in Madison County, and the judge here originally doubled the bond, didn't he? It started out at $2 million. At some point, we got to $2 million.
No,
and then they dropped it back down to $1 million.
Maybe so.
When they asked for relief. Yeah, it was, you guys, it's like the biggest bond that's ever happened here ever. And of course, her attorneys, oh gosh, freaked out about that. At one point, they tried to get it reduced. I think they did get it down to $1 million. But nary a bail bondsman would come within 10 feet of her.
They tried.
Here. Yeah.
They tried. She tried all kinds of things. And bail bondsmen would come in and sit with her and say, we will bond you out if you will tell us where the kids are.
Yeah.
But she couldn't do that. Here's the thing on $1 million bail. The fee to the bail bondsman is anywhere from 10 to 15%. And that's not money you get back. That's just the payment for them putting up this kind of money. So they were looking at needing $100,000 to $150,000 just to bond her out.
Yeah.
And Chad couldn't come up with it. He tried and tried. He tried to borrow it. He tried to get people from his little community all rallied up to save Lori from this illegal thing that was happening to her. And he tried to sell.
His supporters were starting to wane. They were starting to go, maybe we want nothing to do with this.
One of the things that they tried to do was sell a portion of the proceeds from the movies and books that were going to come from this, that they thought that they'd have royalties to the bail bondsmen, promising it would be a whole lot more than that $150,000. And if they had just bailed Lori out right now, well, by God, they'd get a portion of the Lifetime movie. Now, of course, nobody fell for that because Lori and Chad can't make proceeds off of this.
No,
Their
they can't.
families can,
Sadly,
but they
that
can't.
Lifetime movie is coming out at the end of June, but
I know.
yikes. Yeah, so nobody wanted anything to do with this at this point. Nobody wanted to help them.
No.
Everybody in the community was like, she needs to stay her ass right there in that jail, which is in fact where she has been now for more than a year. Yeah. So that's kind of where this all started for us.
Yeah.
And right about the time she was extradited to Madison County is when we kind of went, I think we're going to do a true crime podcast.
Yes.
And actually, I'd had the idea and had talked to Katie about, doing true crime paranormal and doing some psychic stuff and some paranormal stuff and some true crime. But we were watching this insane case play out. And one of the reasons we really wanted to talk about it is because these folks are Mormons, okay? We're former Mormons. We know all about the culture in the church. We know all about the culture in this community. And there have been a lot of things going on in this case that can be confusing. And if you're looking from the outside in, none of this makes any sense. I mean, it still doesn't make any sense.
No.
But we've been able to explain a lot and give perspective on a lot of things.
Definitely. And they are not traditional Mormons by any sense.
No,
but
they're not.
There's quite a bit of lingo and scripture and reference and innuendo and culture that all ties back to the Mormon church. And we felt like we could help in that regard. And I only feel like we have done that in helping to explain things that confounded a lot of you guys. I'm going to back up really fast because I ran and looked. I wanted to be sure. It was a $5 million bond in Hawaii that was reduced to $1 million here. You were right.
I knew it came in higher. That's right. Thank you for that. Yeah. Which was just unfreaking heard of, you guys. Unheard of here.
Yes. So when Lori was arraigned, she had 3 attorneys, and they were all from the Boise area, which is like 5 hours away from here.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. But her attorneys were 2 criminal law attorneys. I should have looked up. Oh, Edwina was her name, and her partner. And she was supposed to be like, they called her on their website a pit bull in heels. She sure didn't act like it in court. She actually acted very nervous. Her voice shook. I didn't see pit bull in heels. But
I don't know. I don't think anybody could look at this woman in this situation and go, I'm confident I know what to do with this.
Right.
Think anybody's felt like that from day one.
For sure. And they had just met Lori like that day, the day of the arraignment. The third attorney was a family law attorney by the name of Mark Means.
Yeah.
Well, right after the arraignment, the other 2 attorneys withdrew from the case. Yeah. They either decided that she was guilty as hell and they wanted nothing to do with this, or they realized that she really couldn't pay them, or whatever. We don't know.
I really wonder if they wanted her to say where the kids are. You need to tell the judge where those kids are right now. And when she wouldn't do it, they went, oh boy, no.
This is nonsense. So then Mark Means stepped to the plate. And what we understand about Mark from other attorneys that have talked about Mark quite a bit, particularly Scott Reich, is that Mark had never even tried a felony case before.
Yeah.
And it showed. It still shows because he has made a lot of missteps in court. He files things incorrectly. Not to mention just the basic spelling and grammar of his briefs is just horrifying. But anyway, but it's been really interesting to watch this play out because Lori has an attorney that's feeling his way through a dark hallway.
Yeah.
All this time.
Yeah, from the very, very beginning. I mean, one of the most insane hearings I think anyone's ever seen ever was a bail reduction hearing that he had requested in which he had filed all the wrong paperwork. And then he complained the entire time that the prosecutor was being mean to him, and that's why they
Mhm.
needed to reduce Lori's bond.
Basically 2 hours of you should reduce Lori's bond because the prosecutor's been mean to me, because the
Yes.
jail has been mean to me because I don't know what the hell I'm doing,
Yeah.
basically.
It was honestly, right then I went, how is this guy still her attorney? Like,
Right.
and we've now been through a year of this, and we're still going, how is this guy her attorney? But he
Well,
is.
we've begun to call trips to court with John Pryor, Chad's attorney, and Mark Means a belligerent turd circus for all the
Yes.
right reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for all the right reasons, most definitely. So there were a lot of, kind of legal jockeying things that went on for a while. And, so we were keeping an eye on all of that with Lori in jail and everyone going, when is Chad going to be arrested? When are we going to find out where these kids are?
Yeah. I mean, that was still the $1 million question. Where are the kids?
Yeah.
And Colby, Lori's adult son, Colby, trying to talk to her in jail on the phone, and her telling him, we'll all be together again soon. Everything's fine. Don't worry. We're all going to be together soon. And Colby knowing something is way, 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 way wrong.
Yeah.
So everyone in their family is picking a side. Lori's family is going to the press saying, Lori is a wonderful mother. She would never hurt her children. Lori's friends are going to the press and lying their asses off.
Everyone's on Dateline and everyone's on East Idaho News, and Dateline and East Idaho News start working together. And then we have Justin Lum and Arizona who's working, and we've got, we're getting all these different sides of this, but
we start
none of these people are
learning
saying where the kids are.
Yeah. And we start learning more and more about Lori. Besides the fact we learn that she's been married 5 times, we also learn that Lori has a string of death around her that is really concerning. We learn that there has been a murder, or not a murder, but a strange unattended death. We learned that Tylee's dad, Joseph Ryan, died in 2018. An unattended death, and he lay dead in his apartment for a time before he was found. And that felt very weird. And then, of course, we've learned about Charles Vallow's death in 2019. So we have 2 deaths in a row here of Lori's ex-husbands. And then we're looking at Chad Daybell's wife's death, which she was exhumed. One thing we didn't mention is that, and we're sorry, it's just, if this was on a wall with, push pins and yarn, it would be some kind of weird Afghan by now,
It really would. There's no way to do this in a linear way.
But one thing we had learned is that Tammy Daybell was exhumed about 6 weeks after she died for an autopsy. She died a healthy woman, just didn't wake up one morning and there was no autopsy. She was just buried. And so they went back and did an autopsy because that was weird. And the day after Tammy was exhumed, Alex Cox died mysteriously in Arizona. So now so everything is just leading up to, there's all these deaths. Everyone is talking
Lori's
about this.
brother. Just a reminder.
Alex is Lori's brother. Then we learn that in October of 2019, just right before Tammy died, that Lori's niece, Melanie, who was in the middle of a divorce, that someone tried to kill her ex-husband, shot him in his driveway. He was driving a Tesla, and somebody shot his window out in a drive-by trying to kill him. And that he and their children were in hiding for fear of their life. So now there's all of these things that have happened that it's really starting to look like we have some serious bad guys on our hands here.
Right. Like, look at how many people are dead. Well, the other thing we learned is that somebody tried to kill Tammy about 2 weeks before she did die. She thought someone ran up to her and fired a gun at her. She thought it was a paintball gun.
Mhm.
And when the gun didn't fire, that person ran away. And she was like, wow, that was weird,
Mhm.
But at the time, she didn't know any of this other stuff.
No,
She
she
posted
just
about it on Facebook. It's not like she called the cops. She didn't.
no, she did call the cops.
Did she
Yeah,
call the cops? Oh,
there
okay.
was a police report. She
Oh,
did call the
that's right.
cops, but she posted on Facebook to, hey, friends and family. And I have a cousin who was friends with her and friends with her on Facebook. And she said, I remember
That's
that
right.
post very well. It was really weird. They live way out in the country. And she was just getting out of her car from a church function and was getting some things out of the back seat when someone in a black mask runs into their driveway, takes a couple of shots at her, and runs away.
Yeah.
And she thought it was a paintball gun. We know
Yeah.
now that was Alex, and that was a real gun. Alex
Yeah.
was actually a super bad hitman, but
Worst, fortunately. But
now we know there's all of this death and all of this suspicious stuff. So
yeah.
everyone's on pins and needles last summer going, where are the kids? There's all these rumors that they have had cadaver dogs in Yellowstone, because that's the last place we know that Tylee was alive.
Yeah.
And so there's all this talk
And
that maybe
can
they
you imagine trying
disposed
to
of her
search
up
Yellowstone
there.
with cadaver dogs? Holy
No.
shit.
Can you imagine how dangerous?
They were
Anyway,
waiting till the snow melted so they could get out there, which is the absolute most dangerous time to be there because that's when all the bears wake up.
yeah. And
It
all the
was
grizzly bears
insane.
start coming out hungry. Yeah. And so we were hearing all of these things that this is all happening. And then just out of the blue, on June 9th, there is a flurry of activity, and we find out that there's about to be a press conference. And Mars and I throw on our shoes and we drive to that site as fast as we can, and we get in on that. And that's when they finally do announce we have dug up Chad's property and remains have been found.
Yeah.
And then we also learn at that time that they finally did take Chad into custody.
Yeah. And they took him into Fremont County. So Chad lives in Salem, he's in Fremont County on the edge of Madison County. So it ended up putting Chad and Lori in different jails in different counties. But he went in, he immediately got $1 million bond too, and has been sitting his ass in that jail ever since.
Yep. Yeah. And of course, then we learn that there are indeed two bodies.
Yes.
And then we learn that they are the children. And we learn that the condition of the bodies is really troubling. We learned that they appear to have died at different times, which no one knew that for sure until then.
But it was kind of new because of their electronic footprints that they were, they died about 10 days apart, we think.
Yeah. We learned that Tylee's body was mutilated, and, that she was dismembered and burned in basically a big makeshift fire pit in Chad's backyard, kind of buried in various places. And I know that's really horrific. I'm sorry for even saying it, but that's the way Tylee, was handled. So then there are charges, finally. There are conspiracy charges on the deaths of the children. They're not murder charges. They're conspiracy charges that have to do with the bodies, with the handling of the bodies and the
concealing and destroying evidence.
Concealment and destroying. Yeah. And so then, of course, then there's pre-trial for Chad, which was very enlightening. And there were police officers and FBI agents and friends like Melanie Gibb who are all called to the stand. So a preliminary is just giving the judge enough evidence for them to know that there is enough evidence to charge and try this person, And so we learned that Alex has the pings from his cell phone have him in the middle of the night, the last day that Tylee was seen, at Lori's apartment at like 2:00 in the morning, and then back at his place at 5. And then we have him at Chad's house about 9. all the while that there's some really weird text messages that Chad has sent his wife, Tammy, that day, who was at work. She was his librarian at an elementary school.
Yeah.
And the pings have Alex in very specific places on Chad's property. And that's how the FBI knew where to dig to find the children's bodies.
Yeah.
It is astonishing. And we also learn that when it's all said and done, Chad swings by a local taco joint for lunch, or not Chad, Alex, on his way home, which is so gross that I can't ever eat there ever again. But anyway,
we won't say the name because we don't want to hurt them. But no, yes, it is horrifying.
Yeah. So this happens. So, they do pretrial. So then Mark Means comes back and says, we don't need a pretrial. We're going to waive our right to that because why have one,
Yeah.
So then all of this last year, there's lots of news doing interviews with family. There's lots of gossip back and forth, like from Melanie Pawlowski and her, Lori's niece, Melanie, and her new husband, Ian Pawlowski. And that's a whole thing. If you guys want to know all about that jam, just go into our playlist and you'll find all of their drama. It is quite the soap opera.
Load of crap. Yeah.
So there's lots of that going on. And, lots of news organizations talking family members into doing interviews. And we have Lori's mother, Janice, and her sister, Summer, spinning a big ball of bullshit for Dateline and, really defending Lori. She would never do something like this and lying about when the last time they talked to the kids was, just all this stuff. But not a lot happens other than that. And for a long time, nothing really happens. We have all these trips back to court that are just on all this superficial stuff. The defense tries to get Rob Wood thrown off of the case as the prosecutor because they are accusing him of some poor behavior. They lose that. There's just a lot of wailing
and the Idaho Supreme Court, and they get slapped down. Just a lot of drama. They don't, the underlying desperation that you get from all of this is that murder charges are coming on these people, and they have no defense. There's no defense. They have nothing that they can come back and say, this is why we did it, and it's not our fault, or blah, 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 whatever. They murdered children. And so you can see that there's this desperation in the things that their attorneys are doing, nitpicking crap like, you didn't give me this document, or we gave you a 2 terabyte hard drive with all of it on it. I don't want to have to find it. You find it for me kind of crap. And
lots and lots of Mark Means whining and refusing to do his job and trying to make everyone else do it for him.
I'm being picked on by the prosecutor. Lots of that crap because, looming is Tammy's autopsy finally comes back. They announce it in the news. So we know Chad's wife's autopsy has been back. They don't release it to the public.
Or to anybody. In fact, Chad's daughter, Emma, actually does a little phone interview. And this is the only time Chad's kids have spoken up in the news at all. Now, Emma and her husband have been combative on social media kind of early in the thing, and then they got really quiet. But she actually did a little bit with Court TV and told them, we just want to see our mother's autopsy. We didn't even know she was exhumed till it was already done. And that was very upsetting. Our dad has now been in jail for all this time. Everything is so bad and hard. And now they're saying they have her autopsy back, but we're not allowed to see it. And we're just heartbroken and angry. Yeah. So, but that's basically what the sheriff told them is that, it's an ongoing investigation. And until it isn't, he can't let them see it.
Well, and that's when we know
something is there
on Tammy. Because if it was natural causes, they would have told the family and it would have been released. We've seen it happen with. Yeah, they just would have said it. They've done it. They've said it in Alex Cox's case, although we still don't believe that that's true. They've said it in Joe Ryan's case. We still don't believe that's true. But if they didn't find anything, they would have said. Yeah. So we know this is all looming over them. It's coming. And you have to understand that there were a lot of blunders at the beginning of this case with particularly Fremont County. Fremont County it's a very large county with a very small population and a very small police force. And the coroner is just a person that's hired to work for $10 an hour to be a coroner. Like they're not a doctor.
Right.
So
No.
they took Chad's word that Tammy just died in her sleep and that she'd been
Mhm.
coughing and wasn't feeling well.
Mhm.
These were the kinds of mistakes that had happened. So a lot of stuff happened
Mhm.
where the state attorney general's office jumped in. They appointed Rob Wood as the special prosecutor over this case.
Mhm.
And some things happened. The FBI came in, like our local law enforcement needed help
Yeah.
because we've never had anything like this before, ever.
No.
And not, so many of them were like, this is way out of our league.
Mhm.
So a lot of stuff has happened, and there's been a lot of criticism that they've been slow to charge Chad and Lori, but Chad and Lori have been sitting their butts in jail, man. They had a
Mhm.
lot of time. And so what finally happened was it last week? Well, it
Mhm.
was 2 weeks ago
Yeah.
that they convened a grand jury, a secret
Mhm.
grand jury, and they brought in all these people, lots of the
Mhm.
players that we know and have already talked about, and then some others
Mhm.
too,
Yeah,
and had
huge
this
witness list, like close to 30 people.
yeah,
Yeah.
including 2 of Chad's children,
Mhm.
um, came and testified in this secret, grand jury, and they came back and they indicted Chad and Lori in first-degree murder. So Chad
Mhm.
has first-degree murder on his wife, Tammy, on Tylee and JJ, plus
Mhm.
he has conspiracy to um, commit first-degree murder on all 3 of them, and
Mhm.
he has 2 counts of life insurance fraud.
Yeah.
Lori has first-degree murder on Tylee, first-degree murder on JJ, and then conspiracy to commit first-degree murder on Tammy, Tylee, and JJ.
Mhm.
And she has federal Social Security fraud
Mhm.
because she was still collecting the children's Social Security long
Yeah.
after they were dead.
Because they had Social Security because they had dead dads. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So all of that came down. Well, all of that actually, the results of that came down last week.
Mhm.
So they were arraigned, well, sort of
Yep.
arraigned
Yeah, there was one and a
on
half
some
arraignments
charges.
that
Yeah.
happened last Wednesday. Chad's arraignment
Charles.
was pretty normal, you
Yeah.
know. Lori, they started proceedings with a closed door meeting, immediately came back, and the judge said that in light of things he was just told, he was going to put a stay on this for now. There'd actually been a stay on Lori's other case since March, so it wasn't a big surprise that they didn't arraign her, but it really
We
set
didn't know
everybody's
what
hair
the
on
stay
fire
was
again.
for.
Because there'd been a lot of secrecy around it. So that
Yeah.
happened on Wednesday.
So then on Thursday,
Yeah.
we get notice, it's all over the local news that Lori has been found incompetent to stand trial, and that's why there's been a stay.
Mhm.
But she's been found to be restorative, which means that
Mhm.
she can, like, go into the state hospital for a while, get some meds, talk to some counselors, get some help, and
Mhm.
then come back out and be tried. She will
Mhm.
not Idaho does not have an insanity plea. We
Mm-mm.
just have competency, and then when someone is deemed incompetent but restorative, it means they can get their mental health under control, and then they can be charged and tried.
Yeah.
So, we're
Uh,
just standing on that right
yeah.
now.
And we know that's been really upsetting. A lot of you guys have been really worried about it. She's not getting off on anything. It's
No.
just going to slow her case
Yeah.
a little bit. So we'll see. And then, of course, the other thing that happened on Thursday is that the police in Arizona announced that they have now put forth the recommendation for charges in first degree conspiracy charges in the murder of Charles Vallow.
Yeah.
So on Lori. So all of that happened on the same day. Now, will they pursue those? They might not because there's already so much piled up here in Idaho. But it's still some good vindication for his family that yes, he was murdered by
Yeah.
Lori and by Alex. Yeah.
Yes, as has been suspected all along. There are 2 people we haven't talked about very much that I think we should,
Mhm.
because they're pretty key, and that one of them is Zulema Pastenis.
Yes.
So Zulema Pastenis was married very briefly to Alex Cox, Lori's brother. Very
And she was
briefly,
a
like
good
a
friend of
month.
Lori's. Yeah.
A good friend of Lori's, involved in all of this prepper stuff. One of the
Mhm.
things we haven't said that you have to understand is that Chad has written a whole bunch of books.
Mhm.
I think Amazon has pulled them down now. I really hope so. But there are a lot of this apocalyptic Mormon prepper kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so he was a podcaster and a speaker at all of these events, and people were big fans of his books, right?
Mhm.
Zulema Pastenis being one of those people and also a good friend of Lori's. Also married very briefly to Alex Cox. As soon as Alex Cox died, Zulema Pastenis got an attorney. And we know because prosecutor Rob Wood has said that she has conditional immunity in some of these cases, in all of them, and some we don't know.
No.
But what that means is she has immunity for anything that she tells authorities.
Mhm.
She does not have an immunity if someone else can approve something
Mhm.
that she said or did that involves her.
Mhm.
It's been really clear from the beginning that she knows a lot more than she's saying.
Mhm.
But we hear very little from her because obviously her attorney is telling her to say nothing. But she was here
Yeah.
to testify at the grand jury, and we are very curious still about what does she know, what was her involvement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I took a quick peek.
Mhm.
Chad's books are still active on Amazon. There was
Oh
a
man,
huge
Amazon had
call
said they
for
were going to pull them
people.
down.
They have not. They're all
Mm.
still available. It looks like only via Kindle, but yeah, you can still don't, but you can still go buy that nonsense.
Don't
But
buy them. Don't support him.
yeah.
But that's where a lot of this comes from, is that
Mhm.
Chad basically has built a following
Yeah.
in which Chad started telling people. See, if you know anything about the LDS Church, the LDS Church has a hierarchy of leadership that begins with who they call the prophet. He's the president of the church. He, as in it's always a male,
Mhm.
and they consider him to be a prophet of God.
Mhm.
Um, Around the time that the kids were murdered, it's all
Yes.
so crazy. He started telling people in his community and in his church that he is the real prophet of the Mormon church and that the people in his community need to stop listening to the prophet in Salt Lake City and start
Mhm.
listening to him. This resulted in excommunication or voluntary removal, something. He
Yeah.
was kicked out of the Mormon church.
Mhm.
But you have to understand when you see stuff that says cult mom,
Mhm.
some people are referring to this group as a cult. We don't know that it is.
Yeah.
And maybe it would have been eventually had they not been caught.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of that, you know, really earnest following of him. And
Mhm. Oh
that
yeah.
brings us to Melanie Gibb.
Yes.
So do you want to talk about Melanie Gibb?
So Melanie Gibb was Lori's best friend. They'd only been friends since about 2018. They met when Melanie spoke at a church event that Lori attended, or I couldn't decide from hearing that if it was an actual church event or if it was more of a prepper event at a church. But anyway, something along those lines in Arizona. And they had some similarities in their children and in their backgrounds, and they started spending a lot of time together. And Melanie, by all purposes, it seems, really became Lori's right hand man.
Well, and
Lori
isn't
was
she who introduced Lori to Chad?
to Chad. Yep,
Yes.
she introduced Lori to Chad at an event in St. George, Utah,
And that was in
and
September of 2018, you guys.
mhm,
This is what you have to consider.
like this all
All of
happened
this
really
has
fast.
happened in less than 3 years.
Hmm.
All of it.
Yep, yep. So Melanie knew that Chad and Lori were having an affair. They were both married. She knew a lot of things. Now she did one thing that really helped law enforcement. She well, she did one thing that really didn't help law enforcement. She actually, when Lori and Chad first fled to Hawaii, when the police started sniffing around asking about the kids, they asked Melanie to lie to the police and tell them that she had JJ in Arizona. And she did do that. And then after a day or two, got to feeling like that was probably the wrong thing to do. and called the police back and said, I do not have JJ and I haven't seen him. So sometime around January, she kind of got feeling weird about what's really going on here. Why did you ask me to lie to the police? Or at least that's what she said. Now we're all really starting to question what Melanie really is up to, but that's what she had said.
Yeah, so in January 2020.
Mm-hmm. So she called them on the phone, on speakerphone, and she recorded the conversation. And she basically, and if you want to see this, it is our episode called Scripture Dance Off. Because or Scripture Battle, I can't remember. Scripture Dance Off, I think. But they, because she and Lori were fighting each other with basically throwing around verses and villains from the Book of Mormon at each other. But basically, she kind of gets them to. She tells them it's not cool that they asked her to lie to the police, and she tries to get them to tell her where the kids are, but they don't. But it is a really interesting peek into their dynamic and what's going on there. So a lot of people have felt like Melanie knows a lot more than she was saying. I will admit I fell for her hype. I thought she did a great job at the hearing, at the prelim, and I felt like she was really brave about it. Chad's lawyer was so mean to her, it wasn't even funny, and she really held her ground.
She did.
But a lot of people have felt like she knows a lot more than she's saying, and that this dumb, naive job she's been putting on is exactly that. And so if you look back last week on Wednesday night case updates, we shared a very short portion of a phone call between Melanie and another friend who had recorded a conversation between her and Melanie that really indicates that she knew that Charles's death was a setup, that he was murdered, that they were making it look like self-defense. And a part we didn't share because we don't have it, but apparently she also basically says in that call that she had known for many months that the kids were dead before the police ever found them, and spilled a lot of tea. And so we're not really sure what's going to happen with Melanie. We suspect she's going to have some charges, unless she's got an use immunity agreement, which, like Zulema does, which she may. We haven't heard anything about it.
But, she testified at this secret grand jury, and so we don't know if she came out with all of this at that grand jury and maybe made a deal that she was going to tell them everything she knew if they didn't prosecute her, because ultimately she could be looking at some charges, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, most definitely. So Melanie Gibb's a very interesting player here. She's definitely one to keep an eye on. She puts on a real, I'm just silly and naive and kind of a stupid routine, but it's really starting to look more and more like that's not really true. She was Lori's sidekick. We know that she helped Lori to steal Charles's truck and steal all of his stuff and basically kick him out of their house while he was on business way back in like January or February of 2019. Like, she's been involved in Lori's bullshit for a while.
She has. She definitely has. She knows more for sure.
Yeah.
But that kind of gives you some background. It's not everything, because if we did that, the show would go on for hours and hours, and it's already over an hour long. But we wanted to give you kind of a synopsis of the case, because we do cover it so heavily and it can get confusing. If you want to know more, we have a playlist on our YouTube channel of all of our, and you can go back to the very beginning and then listen to them chronologically, of all of our episodes about this case, because it is so crazy and it is local to us and has this connection to us because we've grown up in this culture and community, that there are things that we understand on a different level,
Yeah.
But we did want to kind of sum this up. So if you're new with us and sometimes you're like, I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about, we talk about this case every week. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the Daybell Vallow case, or we talk about JJ and Tylee. This is who we're talking about.
Yep. So there you have it. Is your head spinning yet? It should be.
It should be, and it probably will be again this week, because it's been a holiday weekend. So tomorrow's the first business day of the week, and we'll see what gets filed, because
there was one filing. There's already one filing that we haven't gotten to yet. We'll be talking about that, but
well, there you go.
Because John Pryor thinks he can violate the First Amendment, and it turns out, no, John, you can't.
Oh, yes. No, he cannot.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. He got slapped. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys, this is our Tuesday case. So we'll be back with our Wednesday case, and which is a really powerful and challenging MMIW case we want to share with you. And then we'll be back with case updates on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain, live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And then Thursday night will be the Psychic Hour, and it is the first Thursday of the month, which means it's
Nice.
marching orders. So
Our favorite.
Yeah, we'll be doing a reading for every sign. And then we totally flaked on pop-ups over the weekend because we were camping.
Yeah.
But this
We were
weekend,
going to do them, but they
there will
looked
be
too
some.
bad. Yeah.
It's really hard to do stuff like that when you're camping, but we
Yeah.
promise this week there will be some, so there's so much more to come.
Yeah.
If you want to send us a case that you would like us to look into, go to truecrimeparanormalpodcast.com, and there's a form there you can fill out and send us a case you're interested in. Try to send us unsolved cold cases. Those are the ones we like the best. We don't read current cases for reasons we have explained in this episode, but we do present them sometimes depending on what's going on. So if there's something near and dear to your heart, send it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys know it. We are True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. Thanks for being here.
Take care.